Coming up on our newscast tonight. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un leaves Beijing after holding a luncheon with Chinese President Xi Jinping, likely having discussed strengthening bilateral ties and the upcoming summit with Washington. Kim also visited an economic district in Beijing, reflecting a determination to improve the regime's economy. The Daegu District Court approved South Korean plaintiff's request to seize local assets of a Japanese steelmaker which refused to compensate victims of wartime forced labor. In response, the Japanese government is looking to resolve the issue through bilateral negotiations, but may also consider retaliatory measures. The curtain rises for this year's Consumer Electronics Show. At the 52nd edition of this grand event, global tech titans show off their latest products and innovations, ranging from AI to smart cars and homes, with startups vying for attention as well. News Center begins now. It's 8 p.m. here in Korea, live from our studio in Seoul. This is Arirang News Center. Welcome to our program, Daniel Choi. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un wrapped up another round of a surprise visit to China and is on his way back home. He is known to have held a summit with President Xi Jinping and looked around some industrial facilities in Beijing. So far, though, North Korean and Chinese media are staying quiet, not releasing any related reports. Woo Jung-hee starts us off.
North Korean leader Kim Jong-un wrapped up his fourth visit to China after spending time with Chinese President Xi Jinping and looking around industrial facilities in Beijing. The special train carrying Kim Jong-un and his entourage left the Chinese capital on Wednesday afternoon. It takes about 14 hours from Beijing to Pyongyang by train, so it's expected that Kim will get home early Thursday morning. Kim arrived in Beijing in the morning Tuesday. It was in fact his birthday, and he spent part of it in an hour-long summit with Xi Jinping, during which they're believed to have coordinated on their strategies ahead of Kim's possible second summit with U.S. President Donald Trump. Another important topic would have been strengthening their bilateral ties, since this year Pyongyang and Beijing celebrate 70 years of diplomatic relations. Kim also made this trip an opportunity to learn from China's economy. On Wednesday, the North Korean leader went to Beijing's Economic and Technological Development Area. He looked around a factory owned by China's representative pharmaceutical company Tongren Tang for 20 to 30 minutes. Then he met with the Chinese president once again for lunch before leaving Beijing. Kim Jong-un's surprise visit to China comes after Washington hinted at the possibility of North Korea-U.S. summit taking place soon. But both the North Korean and Chinese media are very quiet about this news. They were quick to confirm Kim's China trip on Tuesday, but after Kim arrived in China, no other details about his schedule, including the summit with President Xi, have been revealed. Watchers say this may be to not irritate the U.S. when the atmosphere is being created for the second Pyongyang-Washington summit. The U.S. has also been silent on Kim's visit to Beijing. Woo Jung-hee, Arirang News.
With the North Korean leader's visit to Beijing arousing speculation about an imminent Pyongyang-Washington summit, the possibility of a high-level meeting between the two sides is also emerging. But the U.S. State Department says there is nothing scheduled as of now. For details, let's turn to our Lee Ji-won.
According to Radio Free Asia, the State Department spokesperson for East Asia and Pacific Affairs Katina Adams said Tuesday there is nothing to announce in terms of a visit to North Korea by Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. There has been speculation he might go to Pyongyang since he did after each of Kim Jong-un's trips to Beijing last year. Some also think Kim's latest trip could mean that a second Kim-Trump summit is imminent, which would require a high-level meeting at the very least to prepare. But there's been no official response from the U.S. about Kim's visit to Beijing. When asked to respond, Adams simply told RFA to ask China. And from President Trump, not even a tweet. But behind the scenes, North Korea and the U.S. appear to be working to make the Kim-Trump summit happen. South Korea's ambassador to the United States, Cho Yoon-jae, told reporters on Tuesday that a preparatory meeting for the second Kim-Trump summit could be held soon.
It's understood that North Korea and the US are continuing exchanges behind the scenes to prepare for the summit. And since President Trump and Kim Jong-un are determined to meet again, there are high expectations that a preparatory meeting will be held soon.
These behind-the-scenes communications are reportedly led by Stephen Biegun, Washington's special representative for North Korea. But it's not clear if North Korea's Vice Foreign Minister Choi Sun-hee is at the other end of the line. Publicly, talks between North Korea and the U.S. appear to have stalled since November last year, when Secretary Pompeo's meeting with his counterpart Kim Yong-chol was postponed at the North's request due to scheduling issues. But various reports citing U.S. officials said Pyongyang actually wasn't ready. With the talks allegedly stalled due to a difference of view in terms of the denuclearization process and what rewards North Korea should get for following through, experts say the two sides will need to come to terms on that if the high-level talks are going to be held. 이지원, Arirang News.
Last year, Seoul's government ordered a Japanese firm to provide compensation to Koreans forced into labor during World War II. Today, an order took effect freezing the company's assets. It'll forfeit those assets if the firm doesn't agree to pay the victims as ordered. Tokyo's government called for bilateral negotiations with South Korea to settle the dispute. Park Ki-jun gets us up to speed with the developments.
The local assets of Nippon Steel and Sumitomo Metal Corporation were officially frozen on Wednesday after legal notification from the court was delivered to PNR, Nippon's joint venture with South Korean steelmaker POSCO. The notice was sent by Daegu District Court after the Japanese steelmaker refused to respond to the Supreme Court's order to compensate Korean victims of wartime forced labor. The assets in question are 81,000 shares of PNR worth around $357,000. According to the Supreme Court's ruling, the company owes the four plaintiffs in the case about $87,000 each. After the notice was sent, Tokyo formally requested negotiations with Seoul. According to Japan's Kyoto news agency, Japan's Vice Foreign Minister Takeo Akiba summoned South Korea's Ambassador Lee Soo-hoon to call for two-way talks based on the 1965 bilateral agreements that normalized ties between the two countries. It would be the first time the two sides have held talks under the treaty about property claims. But if negotiations don't work out, the treaty calls for an arbitration committee that involves a third country. And if that's not enough, Japanese broadcaster NHK says the Japanese government could even consider taking the issue to the International Court of Justice. Local media outlets have also reported that Tokyo is reviewing economic responses, which could actually strike a blow to Seoul, such as freezing South Korean companies' assets in the country or raising tariffs on South Korean products. Park Ki-jun, Arirang News.
Surviving victims of Japan's wartime sexual slavery, civic groups and citizens have gathered in front of the Japanese embassy in Seoul on almost every Wednesday since 1992. Today marks the 27th anniversary of the first Wednesday demonstration, and the victims and participants are still demanding an official apology from Tokyo. Kan Young-woo has the full story.
Despite the freezing weather, civic groups and some 200 individuals gathered on Pyeonghwa-do Street, right in front of the Japanese embassy in Seoul on Wednesday. They are part of a weekly and peaceful demonstration that for 27 years have been calling on Tokyo to take responsibility for its wartime sexual slavery of Korean women. The protesters, along with the surviving victims of such atrocity, are also demanding an official apology from the Japanese government. But they're also calling on the Korean government to put more efforts into resolving the so-called comfort woman issue through diplomatic channels. They say the landmark agreements signed between the previous administration and Tokyo in 2015, which stipulated the issues solved and served as a basis for the establishment of the Reconciliation and Healing Foundation to financially support the victims and their families, is invalid as it did not take into account the victims' views. Seoul's Ministry of Gender Equality and Families said it has decided to dissolve the foundation last November and said follow-up measures are already in motion to complete the shutdown of the entity. Pacific groups representing the victims are saying the Korean government failed to communicate with them in regards to the shutdown progress.
It's been like this for decades, waiting for an answer, waiting for a solution, seeing time flying by while the victims continue waiting. There's been no answers, no briefing, and no communication.
The surviving victims of Japan's wartime sexual slavery used to come out to the street for these weekly gatherings until late last year. But with an average age of 91 years old, their health conditions have prevented them from being here. Out of 240 registered victims in Korea, only 25 are still alive today. And this number is falling fast. Last year alone, 8 victims passed away. So time is running out for the victims to receive what they call a heartfelt apology from Japan. 간영우, Arirang News.
The 52nd Consumer Electronics Show kicked off in Las Vegas on Tuesday local time. It's the grandest stage for tech firms to showcase their latest products and gadgets. Kim Hae-sung provides a glimpse of what to expect in this year's edition of CES.
4,500 tech companies and more than 180,000 people from 150 countries. This is CES, the world's biggest tech show. Global tech giants are showing off their latest products and innovations, ranging from AI and robots to autonomous cars and smart homes. Artificial intelligence in particular can be seen in almost every type of product at the show.
Evolve, connect, and open is how we'll shape a new future of AI in electronics. And to that vision of AI for truly intelligent living, we gave the name LG ThinQ.
LG ThinQ makes proactive recommendations based on the owner's personal preferences via sensors and voice recognition. Thanks to AI, your fridge will tell you when you're running low on milk and then order some on your behalf. Your vacuum cleaner will know when to clean the floor, and your washing machine will know how long to wash your clothes. Robots are no longer just industrial robots for manufacturing, but also lovely pets embedded with AI that can feel your senses.
Whether it be somebody who can't take care of a dog on their own or somebody who has bad allergies.
And smart cars have become even smarter. Global automakers have unveiled their upgraded versions of autonomous cars that are safer and more efficient, with a range of in-car infotainment where you can exercise, play games, or do virtual shopping. Flying cars are also coming closer to reality. With 6 ducted fans, the hybrid electric aircraft takes off and lands vertically like a helicopter, but is cheaper and doesn't make as much noise.
We're actually partnered with Uber in helping to develop an urban air taxi for this vehicle.
As in the past, the battle to be the king of televisions continues between Samsung Electronics and LG Electronics. But this year, 5G is a key driving theme, with mobile carriers, software, and hardware companies showing their prototypes and detailed timelines of how 5G can disrupt the health and transportation industries and help create smart cities. The 52nd Consumer Electronics Show will run through Friday, and the tech world's biggest players and most innovative startups are vying for attention, hoping their products will drive the next big tech trend. Kim Hae-sung, Arirang News, Las Vegas.
Despite continued government efforts to boost employment, things are not looking up for job seekers. Last year, the overall unemployment rate hit a level Koreans have not seen in almost 2 decades. Our Ko Roon-hee talked to local economic experts for their take on the grim situation.
More doom and gloom for job seekers in Korea, as the latest government figures paint a bleak picture for their prospects. According to Statistics Korea on Wednesday, the overall unemployment rate for last year was 3.8%, its highest since 2001, when Korea was still recovering from the 1997 Asian financial crisis. Statistics Korea attribute the hike to sluggish manufacturing and auto industries and an aging society. This means that more Korean seniors are trying to remain in or re-enter the workforce than in the past. Overall, around 26.8 million people were employed last year, and the number of newly created jobs in 2018 was also low. It increased by 97,000 compared to the previous year. This is the smallest increase since 2009. An economic expert pointed to the economic slowdown and the increase in the minimum wage as the main reasons for the poor figures.
The slowdown in economic growth in 2018 compared to the previous year is one of the main reasons for the high unemployment rate. The sharp increase in the minimum wage is another factor. The unemployment rate reflects the number of people who lost their jobs because of the rise in the minimum wage.
Others say that the South Korean government is going down the right path.
Increasing overall demand is important. This is related to the government's income-led growth policy. Expansionary fiscal policy is also necessary to create effective demand.
For the month of December, the number of newly added jobs increased in the health and social activities, information and communication industries. However, it decreased in the wholesale and retail, business facilities management, and manufacturing sectors. Analysts say the poor figures in the manufacturing industry are mainly due to global uncertainties, such as the ongoing trade war between the U.S. and China. 고르니, Arirang News.
And in response to the dismal employment figures, the nation's finance chief announced plans to turn things around. The goal is to focus on creating more jobs this year by revitalizing private investment and the service sector. Kim Ji-yeon shares with us his remarks.
At a meeting of economy-related ministers on Wednesday, the Minister of Economy and Finance, Hong Nam-gi, said the government aims to create 150,000 new jobs this year by supporting the private sector to boost investment. He stressed that the private sector should be the driving force behind job creation. Hong says he expects the construction of Hyundai Motor Company's new global business center, the new headquarters in Samsung-dong, southern Seoul, to begin during the first half of this year. The 105-story center, in which the Korean automaker has invested nearly $3.3 billion, passed a governmental review earlier this week, some 4 years after the company first announced the investment plan. Also, the minister unveiled plans to revitalize the sharing economy, including the installation of Internet of Things sensors in parking spaces by 2022, so that residents can share parking spaces through smartphone applications. The government will also create overseas sharing offices for small and medium-sized Korean companies. Hong said the government will push to improve employment conditions, especially for young people, women, and the elderly. The Ministry of Justice will come up with guidelines by June for the creation of employment contracts. They're mostly aimed at helping freelancers engaged in the IT sector, as well as those engaged in the sharing economy, be eligible for occupational health and safety insurance coverage, which is one of Korea's 4 basic insurances provided to employees. While visiting a job fair in Seoul, Hong said that although the public sector can't boost job creation like the private sector, the government does have plans to recruit 23,000 public sector jobs this year, some 400 more than last year. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
Turning our focus to trade talks between U.S. and China now. Although the details of the discussions in Beijing remain far and very missing a lot of details right now, the world's 2 superpowers have reportedly narrowed their differences during the talks, which ended on Wednesday. Cho Sung-min fills us in on the latest.
Positive signs are reportedly coming out of Beijing as the world's 2 biggest economies ended their trade talks held in the Chinese capital on Wednesday. Reuters reported that U.S. Undersecretary of Agriculture for Trade and Foreign Agricultural Affairs Ted McKinney said that the talks went just fine without elaborating. The Wall Street Journal reported that the U.S. and China have made progress on narrowing their differences as they extended their talks for an unscheduled 3rd day, and said China agreed to additional purchases of U.S. goods and services as well as widening access to China's markets. But the report also said the 2 sides are still far from striking a deal. This week's meetings are the first formal face-to-face talks between China and the U.S. since their leaders agreed in December to a 90-day tariff truce. Before the talks ended, U.S. President Donald Trump had tweeted that the talks were going very well. China's foreign ministry also made a similar assessment, but it again rejected President Trump's claim that Beijing is engaging in trade talks due to what he described as China's slumping economy.
As for whether the Chinese economy is good or not, like I said just now, China's development has enough resilience and huge potential, and we are fully confident that the fundamentals of the Chinese economy will remain sound for a long term.
The vice ministerial level meeting held in Beijing was briefly attended by Liu He, Chinese President Xi Jinping's chief economic advisor, signaling a possible sense of urgency from China. Liu led a previous round of talks in Washington last year that ended in failure. He is expected to meet Chief U.S. Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer later this month. 조성민, Arirang News.
The key topics of President Moon Jae-in's 2019 New Year's press conference will be the economy and the country's social safety net. According to the president's spokesperson, the event set for Thursday will be an opportunity to explain the administration's policy direction for the year and will largely focus on the economy. In other words, the South Korean leader is likely to press the importance of shoring up the social safety net while working to ease concerns about a slowing economy. Moon has been pressing hard to achieve tangible outcomes this year, especially on the economic front. The president has already met with the owners of SMEs and venture firms this week and held a special New Year's event at the Korea Federation of SMEs. The nation's top office went through another reshuffle this afternoon. President Moon Jae-in appointed 6 new staff members. Yoo Song-hwa, the current secretary to First Lady Kim Jong-suk, was appointed as the new director of Chunchugan, the Cheongwade Press Center, replacing Kwon Hyuk-ki. Secretary for Foreign Press Shin Ji-yeon will take Yoo's place. Former lawyer Kim Ae-kyung will be in charge of foreign media. The president also named 3 new secretaries for State Affairs Information, Political Affairs and Cultural Affairs, respectively. The series of reshuffling comes as President Moon begins his 3rd year of his single 5-year term. At the National Assembly, an advisory panel on political reform has unveiled its proposal to reform the country's electoral system. While the minor parties welcome the recommendation, it doesn't meet the interest of bigger parties, casting a cloud over future negotiations between rival blocs. Kim Min-ji has the latest from the domestic political arena.
For some time, a hot potato at the National Assembly has been how to revamp the country's electoral system, especially with the general elections taking place in April next year. Amid slow progress in negotiations between the rival parties, a panel of advisors to the Parliament's Special Committee on Political Reform unveiled its recommendation on Wednesday, which would strengthen proportional representation. Currently, in the 300-member National Assembly, there are 253 seats that go to the individual candidate who gets the most votes in his or her district, while the other 47 are based on a nationwide vote by party preference.
The people want elections to be more proportional and representative. The current problem is that people's votes are not tied to the parliamentary seats. Reducing this gap will require the adoption of a mixed-member proportional system.
The proposal would raise the number of seats in the National Assembly to 360 to make room for more members to be elected by proportional representation. But the budget allocated to Parliament would not be increased, since the public is against the idea of increasing the number of lawmakers. The proposal would also reform how proportional candidates are nominated so that they would be chosen in a more democratic way and include representatives of various groups in society. The advisory panel also recommends that the voting age be lowered by 1 year to 18. Rival parties are expected to continue their negotiations, taking the proposal into account, but progress is not likely to come easy. The proposal is seen as more favorable to minor parties that can field candidates in many districts.
All the parties should lay out their positions after reviewing the proposal and do everything possible to reach a conclusion on this matter. Now is the time for the National Assembly to respond to the people's demands. We must work through our differences and reach a deal.
The electoral map needs to be finalized 1 year before the next election, giving the parties just over 3 months. It's a tough road ahead given the time it takes to make such revisions, especially when they're already divided over a number of other issues. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
South Korea has designated a sauce-making tradition as an intangible cultural asset. According to the Cultural Heritage Administration, the country's age-long practice of making soy sauce and bean paste will be registered as the 137th intangible cultural heritage. The method has been handed down through countless generations. The tangy, savory flavor of the sauces, or jang, provides the staple flavor for many of Korea's favorite dishes. Making and storing fermented foods for winter was done collectively in family units or even on a community-wide scale, promoting social exchanges and cooperation. Time to turn to Michelle Bach at the Weather Center for the updates you need. Michelle, this morning's cold weather was certainly short-lived, and it's expected to warm up even more tomorrow.
Yes, Daniel. Now, the daytime highs will be about 3 to 4 times higher than today. In fact, it's expected to rise higher than the seasonal norms from now on. And the air quality will generally hover around normal levels, but now dryness is going to be a problem with respective alerts issued nationwide. And the wind continues to blow from the west, which contributed greatly in raising temperatures. Beijing and Tokyo are expected to be about as warm as the southern parts of Korea. Now checking out the readings for tomorrow, Seoul will be waking up to -6 degrees Celsius, Chuncheon to -10 degrees, while Daegu and Gyeongju begins at -4 degrees. And with partly cloudy skies, Seoul will reach up to 4 degrees into the day and higher down south. I'll leave you with the weather conditions around the world.
That's all we could pack into tonight's edition of Arirang News Center. Wherever you may be tuning in from, thanks for staying with us.